Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Darren Bishop. I'm the Vice Chair of PAC for the Town of Quispamsis. I'm sitting in for Darren Lamont, our chairperson this evening. With that, I'd like to call the meeting to order. And can we, for October 8th, 2024. Can we have someone to approve the agenda, please? Brenda?
So moved. I'll second that.
Oh, just a sec. Brent? And seconded by Brent. Okay, will you please vote on that? And that vote is passed unanimously. Moving on to item number 3, is there any disclosures of interest? None being, we'll move on to item 4. Approval of the previous minutes. Can I have someone put a motion forward, please? Oh, Brent?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
Perfect. Okay, can I have a seconder? Brenda?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Please vote. And that motion is carried unanimously as well. Moving on to item number 5, business arising from the previous minutes. Can I have a motion to receive and file, please? Kendall?
I'll make that motion.
All right, and seconder? Brenda?
I'll second that.
Excellent. Can we please vote on that? And motion is carried unanimously as well. Moving on to item number 6, unfinished business. None being, we move on to item number 7. Item number 7 is 44 Robbie's Road, discretionary use daycare facility, PID 00071860. Would you please step to the mic and state your name? And we'll have. Okay, thank you, Ashley. And Jennifer, can you introduce that for us, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to the committee members. Before you is an application to operate a daycare in a rural setting at 44 Robbie's Road. It is considered a discretionary use in our bylaw. The lot does contain, there we go, 2,068 square meters. The intention is to provide daycare for 5 children between the ages of 2 and 5 plus at their own child from Monday to Friday, 7:30 to 5:30 p.m. There are lots of criteria that they do need to meet in our bylaw. There are provisions 6L and in provision 6K. 6L is concerning daycare, 6K is concerning home occupations. The applicant does meet all the provisions in the bylaw. Notices were sent out to property owners within 100 meters. We've received no concerns and staff have no concerns at this time. I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So you've received the same package that we did. Was there anything you'd like to add to the package? Okay. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant on this? Brenda?
Just one. The people driving into the driveway, is there space for them to turn so they can drive out? Because it looks like maybe difficult if you're backing out to see because you have trees around your property. Is there a place to turn and drive out?
There is not. They could pull in or they can back in.
Okay.
But I'm assuming not everybody would come at the exact same time for pickup and drop off.
Yeah, no, I was looking at the trees and thinking it could be a little difficult to, a lot of people drive in and back out. I'm not sure what the visibility would be there at that.
Well, personally, I will pull up and I back in my own driveway.
Yeah.
So I could have that be a thing.
We do too, but most people will come to see us, don't back in.
Right. Totally get it.
And that's my only concern.
Okay.
Right. Thank you, Brenda. Any other comments? Is there anybody in person or online would like to speak for or against this item? Is there anybody online or in person that would like to speak for or against this item? Third and final time, is there anybody online or present would like to speak for or against this item? None being, would somebody like to put a motion for with or against with terms and conditions, please? Mr. Mason?
I recommend that PAC approve the home occupation and discretionary use, a daycare that provides services to more than 5 children, but not more than 15, subject to the provision located in zoning bylaw number 038, section 6L2 and 6K2 at 44 Robbie's Road, PID 0071860, subject to the following terms and conditions. The daycare facility and operation must comply with all provincial regulations and conditions as may be set by the authority having jurisdiction. Number 2, the daycare facility and operation shall comply with all provisions of zoning bylaw 038, subject section 6L1 and 6K2, and all other applicable zoning bylaw provisions. Number 3, a copy of provincial approvals to operate shall be submitted to the town for its records and reference. Number 4, any proposed increase to the number of children attending the daycare will require the approval of the Planning Advisory Committee. Number 5, there should be no on-street parking. Number 6, the landowner enters into a development agreement with the town. Number 7, the daycare facility shall not be occupied until the operator provides the building inspector with evidence that the premises meets all applicable building and fire code requirements.
Thank you. May I have a seconder for that, please? Brenda?
I'll second that.
Okay, on the question, any questions or discussions on that?
One question,
Yes,
Mr.
Mr. President.
Chairman, for staff, I guess, is there any concern about signage?
Jennifer?
To you, Mr. Chair, there was no discussion about signage.
They can have a sign if they want or they don't, yeah.
It would be limited to the sign bylaw, so
Yeah.
if one is required, an application would be submitted and we could vet it at that time.
Okay, thank you. With that, could we please vote? Motion is passed unanimously. You'll have a letter in the mail in approximately 7 business days. Good luck with your venture. Have a good evening. Okay, moving on to item 7B, 25 Mistral Drive, discretionary use, home occupation, PID 302400915. May the applicant please step up to the mic and state their name for us, please.
My name is Gary.
Okay, thank you. And Jennifer, would you like to introduce this for us, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to the committee members. This is an application for home occupation in an R1 zone on a lot that contains 1,175 square meters. The intention is to accommodate an online e-commerce business, so it's just an office in the basement of the home that will be running sort of the online orders. The warehouse is located in St. John. There will be no visits of customers to this location. It is strictly just an office for the e-commerce business. So it does meet the provisions of 6K of bylaws, section 6K. Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. are the hours of operations that are proposed. One employee outside of the homeowners will be employed at that location. There was already a home occupation approved for this location in 2009. Home occupation approvals are only good with the homeowner that has applied for it, so pardon me, that no longer applies. Pardon me. We did send out notification to neighboring properties, and no concerns have been received at this time, and staff have no concerns with the operation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does any members of the Planning Advisory Committee have any questions for the applicant? All right, pretty straightforward application for a home-based business. Is there anybody in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? Is there anybody online or in attendance willing to speak for or against this item for the third and final time? Is there anybody online or in attendance who would like to speak for or against this item? None being, would a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions? Mr. Preston.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion, Planning Advisory Committee grant approval for a home occupation e-commerce business office at 25 Minstrel Drive, PID 302-40915, subject to the following terms and conditions. 1, it should be secondary to the main residential use of the dwelling. 2, not more than one person is engaged therein in addition to any permanent resident of the dwelling unit in which it is located. 3, is confined to the dwelling unit and no part of it is located in an accessory building or structure. 4, the floor area of the dwelling unit which is devoted to it does not exceed the lesser of 25% of the floor area of the dwelling unit or 32 square meters. 5, no change except for a sign pursuant to the town sign bylaw is made in the outside appearance of the building which would indicate that a home occupation is being conducted therein unless approved by the building inspector through the process of a building permit. 6, no goods or services other than those directly pertaining to the home occupation are supplied or sold therein or therefrom. 7, no more than one commercial vehicle used in conjunction therewith or not more than one vehicle of any kind bearing a sign in connection therewith is parked on the lot. 8, there is no parking on the street or within town property. And the PAC approval to operate the business non-transferable. The approval is solely for the benefit of the property owner named herein. In the event the business is discontinued or the lands are transferred, the said approval shall terminate.
Thank you, Mr. Preston. Can I have someone, a seconder on that, please? Mr. Mason?
I'll second that.
All right. Is there any debate or any discussion on that item? None being, please vote. Motion's carried unanimously. Within about 7 days, you'll get a letter in the mail with your approval. Good luck with your venture. Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 7C. 7C Ganola Point Park Subdivision Phase 13, new lots and street, extension PID 3027463 and 30223358, 3031246. Applicant seeking approval for a tentative plan to create 14 residential building lots in single or two-family dwellings, zone R1, and extension the existing public street, Sheraton Avenue, and the creation of a public utility easements for electrical power and telecommunications agencies. Would the applicant please like to step forward to the mic and state your name?
Andrew Toole, Dalmore Service and Engineering.
Mr. Toole, good evening. Mr. Colburn, would you like to introduce this item for us, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the committee. First, I apologize for getting this staff report to you a little late, or than the package went out. So I'll go through it. It's relatively straightforward. Should take me about probably an hour to get through it, so that's okay. So the application that's been received, subdivision application, is for the creation of 14 lots, as the chairperson had mentioned, and extension of public street. Subdivision has presented does not require any variances with respect to lot sizes, street grades, street widths. It meets all the criteria in terms of access points, street lengths, and those types of things. So there's nothing concerning from that perspective. It's relatively straightforward in terms of the street design. It's just an extension of the existing street. The item I will draw some attention to for the Planning Advisory Committee is with respect to access, future access. So PAC will recall in phase 12, there were concerns that it was expressed about as we continue to develop this large tract of land, at what point does an alternate access to a collector street be made? Right now, most of the development in terms of access would be going down Kane Road, simply to flow, come off the arterial, you're going Means Cove, and then get into Kane Road because there's no other access into this particular area from the arterial. At that time, under phase 12, there was discussions about starting to move forward with creating that connection. So that's something that I brought forward in this staff report I think the time is right that start happening, whether that's, the construction as part of this phase or the future phase or no future development. That's something that PAC may wish to discuss as we move through this, and there is a recommendation in the staff report. In terms of sanitary sewer, it's serviced by municipal sewer. Obviously going to be designed respective of the capacities and the demands that are associated with this level of development. Potable water is through on-site wells. There, as mentioned in my staff report, there was a study that was done back in 2019, which was labeled Phase 10, but again, it's just some changing of phases and where development occurred, but it references the same PID. That particular comprehensive study identified basically the creation of, I think it was 11 lots at the time. They cover the area, part of that was covered by this area of Phase 13. Essentially in Phase 12, you had, I think it was 16 lots that were created. You've got 14 now. So a comprehensive water study usually triggered when you get into 25 lots or more, plus the remnant. So we're generally still in that 25 range with full build out of this phase. However, I do make a recommendation in terms of the water, simply to perhaps have an abbreviated study, just because it is moving towards development of another PID that has not been covered. We're 5 years out, just to get a sense to make sure nothing's really changed in that particular area. So it's sort of confirmation of the findings from the previous report. Stormwater management, again, your standard typical, have to look at a comprehensive stormwater management plan, pre and post development, no downstream negative impacts. We have received preliminary, if you will, or initial design drawings. It will be serviced by a piped system, so pipe and catch basins through the network, street network. Again, I'd like to draw attention to, not so much, I guess this is not a PAC thing, but just in terms of the applicant. The province still identifies a wetland in this area. It's been there for eons. And there's been always discussions about whether it's supposed to have been removed, if it exists or not. Still continues to show up. This was part of the discussions with Phase 12. And at that time was indication that there was a wetland delineation that was done as part of another development that indicated that this was no longer in existence, and it was my understanding it was to be removed. But when we go on GONB, it's still there. So it's sort of confirmation that it's no longer there and the mapping hasn't been updated, or it's still present. And if so, then we're into obviously wall-walls, and potentially if the street network goes through it, then you're into compensation. Clarification from that level is required. And finally, it's land for all purposes. So the developer has a credit associated with Phase 9. There's a parcel that was provided for development of the Great Trail that connected to the arterial. There's still credit available that will cover what's required for this particular phase. So in accordance with the Community Planning Act, PAC has to support the use of the credit to cover the LPP requirements for this phase. That will be brought to council, who ultimately makes the final decision on use of the credit towards LPP. My recommendation in the report is that the credit be used, but in the future phases to start looking at other areas where there's potential for, whether that's green space or just sort of trail connectivity and those types of things. But at this stage, we're recommending use of the credit. Open to any questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Colburn. You've received the same package that we did. Do you have anything you'd like to add to Dwight's comments?
So all I'm gonna add is, so I've been talking to Ron about this, making the connection. You gotta make the connection, you gotta make the connection. He really wants to build this one because and his reasoning makes sense, that there's a crest in this development. This is the last piece that sanitary flows out in this direction. When he goes to Minas Cove Road, it's a whole new connection. It's a whole new sanitary connection to bring it up the other way to meet this street. So originally he wanted to go over off Sheraton and do that upper phase. We convinced him not to go there, to stay here. He would really like to do this phase, and then he's pretty committed and like literally this week, he like said, yes, finally, that he is committed to go to Model Farm or Means Cove, sorry, and build street back in to join to this street. So I don't know if that works for you, but he has said yes, finally, that he's going to, if he could have this phase, his next phase will be start at Means Cove, come back in, join them up. Now we have our second access, and then he'll go where he wants in there and build the rest of the development. In terms of the environmental, I wasn't aware that this was still an issue, but I'm sure we can get it resolved pretty easy. Like a simple email from Ryan will make this go away, I think. Because I've walked it, there's no wetland there.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Brent?
Yeah. You made reference that Mr. Scott's looking at doing phase 14, I guess, from Means Cove back. Has he presented a timeline for that?
Well, I think it's gonna depend on what 13 looks like. He wants to build 13 and sell it, and then similar to 12, if the economy stays going like he is, he's gonna start work pretty
Okay.
soon. I know that he's committed that there's a chunk of rock has to come out.
Okay, I was gonna ask that question. I
He
believe
is
that-
committed
yeah.
that he has another agreement that he thinks is almost in place, but he doesn't have anything signed. So he's committed that if that falls through, he will take the rocket.
Okay, because I remember when we were talking
Like,
about. I remember-
until now, I've never
Yeah.
heard that. That was
Okay.
this week, I finally heard that.
Okay, because I know during phase 12, that was the conversation. Geographically, there was a massive rock face in there, whatever, that was kind of holding it back. Okay,
And in phase 12, we encouraged him to go have these conversations with the neighbor, and
Okay.
he would get almost to the point of having an agreement, and then he'd go away to Florida and forget about it for 6 months, and he'd start it again and go away for 6 months, and they all fell through. And then the land got sold. And so now, I don't want to commit that he has an agreement, but he's very, very close, and if not, he's committed that he'll take the rock out.
Okay, Mr. Colburn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So through you to Mr. Preston. So that is, PAC has the authority to set a condition that there's, no future development until that's addressed. So he gets to phase 13 and then he's bound to address that moving forward. So again, that's a recommendation that can be brought to council as part of the approval process and be incorporated into the development agreement if that's the desire of council, of PAC to make that recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Colburn. Mr. Basin?
Actually, that was my point.
Yeah, okay, all right. Any other comments? Okay, is there anyone present or online that would like to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone present or online that would like to speak for or against this item? For the third and final time, is there anybody present or online that would like to speak for or against this item? None being a member of PAC, like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions. One moment, Mr. Colburn, one more comment?
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Chair. One item I did neglect to mention that's in my staff report, and I do want to highlight it, is that part of this development requires an agreement between an abutting property owner, the Dobsons, and that's noted. My understanding is an agreement in principle. So as a condition, no construction development permit not to be issued until that is actually signed off on and in place. That's noted in my staff report because it does require, portion of that property is required to create 2 lots as well as a portion of Sheraton Avenue. So there, to my knowledge, there's agreement in principle, but we want that executed and binding before we get into approvals to construct. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colburn. So is there any member of PC who would like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions?
I can give it a shot. I
Yeah,
recommend
Mr.
that
Mason?
PAC support the approval of the Gondola Point Phase 13 tentative subdivision plan. Number 1, I recommend the approval of the proposed street layout and connection with the existing streets in the area for Phase 13. In Phase 14, the developer must commence construction and complete the Means Cove Road connector. Means Cove connector as part of Phase 14.
That wording could mean we have to build the entire thing as a single phase. Is that the intent?
No, as part of Phase 14.
But does 14 have to come all the way to this phase, or is it start at Means Cove and build in phases until you get here? Because it's a long ways.
Connector road has to be built.
But my only concern, do you know my concern, that it, like, does it have to be a single phase? Because that's gonna be like 50 lots at once. Right, can it be several phases to build those 50 lots, and now you've got a way out, now you can go back and build?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, the focus would be that the next phases of development is focused in that area. It
Right.
is getting that connection, so whether it's one phase, two phase, but is not going into basically the herd of the remnant parcel. Your focus over the next while is getting that connector to get traffic going from the Means Cove into that area. So rather than continuing to build into the remnant and getting all the traffic continuing to go down Kane Road, it's your basically focus is, on that Means Road
Right.
connector.
So phase 14 and any future phases
Until such
would-
time as the
would,
completion.
complete
Yeah.
that connector road, and no other
That works, yeah.
phases could be undertaken without that connector road being completed. Is that?
Just one moment, okay, Brent, you're okay? We're just kind of in the middle here, so,
No, I just want clarification what the motion, or I can wait to debate, but basically we saying the collector road has to be built from Means Cove to Sheraton, and then the phases, the houses will be built out as required, correct?
No. It could be phase 14, 15, 16 to build that connector road is what I
Yep.
envision.
through Dwight?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so it would be the same as what's happening now. You're building the street, you're building the lots, you're building the houses, you're going along. It's just that we're asking that the focus be shifted to building from Means Cove up to Sheraton, so you're making that connector. So just like it's happened right now with phases 12 and 13, you're just basically extending that all the way down until you get to Means Cove Road before you go back into basically the center or development of the remnant parcel into that particular area. Your focus is making the street connection. So that could include, your street, your infrastructure, and the lots associated with it.
Okay, are we clear on that? Okay.
Do we have a good number one?
Do we have,
All right.
do we have
Move
a-
on to number 2, you can brush it
and
up.
item number one, okay, item number 2,
PAC support the use of the LPP land credit established as part of Phase 9 to fulfill the LPP requirements for Phase 13. PAC recommends the developer work with the town to identify areas where additional green spaces and trail connectors can be incorporated into the Gondola Point Park development and be brought forward to the PAC in the next phases of the development. Number 3, the developer is required to complete an abbreviated water source and supply assessment for Phase 13. And number 4, prior to any issuance of any permits, the developer is required to provide the agreement with the adjacent landowner to town staff.
okay, are we good with that motion? Can we have a seconder, please? We have someone to second that motion? Brenda?
I'll second that.
Thank you. I guess any discussions on that motion? We're all clear on, item number 1? Okay, please vote. The vote is unanimous. You will have a letter in the mail within 7 business days. Good luck with your next phase. Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 8, information items and discussion. None being moved to item number 9, adjournment. Brenda?
I'll move.
Thank you. Seconder for that? And Mr. Preston seconds. Meeting is adjourned.